Imagine a scenario right now just playing out in front of you. You are looking at a deeply dangerous problem.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Let's say it's an active, unfolding threat, and you have the power to fix it immediately. You can just step right in, shut it down, and make everything safe for everyone involved.
Right, the obvious choice.
You'd think so, right? But if you let it play out, if you choose to just, watch it instead of fixing it, you'll gather incredibly valuable data.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, data that might help you understand a whole network of other, perhaps even bigger, systemic problems. So, which do you choose?
That is an agonizing decision.
It really is. Do you fix the immediate danger, or do you let it run to get that incredibly valuable data? Today, we're doing a deep dive into a document that argues this exact dilemma is playing out in intelligence agencies around the world right now.
And, well, the way they're choosing to solve it might actually terrify you.
Exactly. We are looking at a source called the Intelligence versus Human Life Position Paper. We're basically going to look under the hood of institutional incentives.
Which is always a wild ride, honestly.
Right. We want to see what happens when the systems we build start pulling the people inside them in very unexpected and sometimes very troubling directions.
Yeah, we're looking at the choice between the immediate, tangible intervention and the sort of long-term theoretical observation.
And before we get too deep, I just want to make a really quick but important disclaimer for you listening. Our goal today is to impartially explore the arguments made in this specific paper.
Right, we are not taking sides here.
No, not at all. We aren't condemning any specific agency, and we definitely aren't saying this is the absolute factual reality of every single covert operation on Earth.
We're simply unpacking a really thought-provoking, highly critical perspective on how secretive bureaucracies function under immense pressure.
Exactly. We just want to understand the mechanics of the argument. So the authors actually frame this as a critical lens, right?
Yeah, they do. They make that boundary very clear right from the jump. It's a lens for viewing potential systemic flaws, rather than just, a blanket indictment of the people doing the actual work.
They want us to separate what an agency values in its mission statement from what it mathematically values in its daily operations.
Which are often two completely different things.
So true. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's move from that opening hypothetical into the absolute core premise of the paper.
The fundamental conflict.
Right. There is this fundamental conflict happening on the ground between a stated priority and an operational reality. The central thesis we're looking at today is that, while in some intelligence and security contexts, the collection of data takes precedence over human life.
Yeah, the preservation of the intelligence stream essentially wins out over the protection of people.
Which sounds crazy, right? But what's fascinating here is why this happens, according to the logic in the paper.
You really have to look at the mechanical nature of an intelligence source.
Break that down a bit. What do you mean by mechanical nature?
Well, think about an active source, whether that's a highly placed human informant, or maybe a compromised adversary computer network, or even just a tapped phone line.
Right.
It's incredibly valuable because it provides three specific things. It gives you continuing access, information, and strategic insight. It's essentially a live, ongoing feed into the adversary's world.
And a live feed requires a connection.
Exactly.
So if you step in to intervene, if you arrest that compromised source to get them off the street, or you shut down a dangerous hacking operation, that intervention severs the connection.
You might neutralize the immediate threat, sure, but the intelligence stream just ceases. The window slants completely shut.
Which leaves the decision makers facing these intense, agonizing incentives, right? They're pressured to preserve the collection even when it elevates the risk to the actual people involved.
Yeah, the paper argues that keeping that live feed going often becomes the overriding goal. It silently trumps the imperative to intervene.
I want to try to make this a bit more relatable for everyone listening because, we're talking about high-level classified intelligence, but the mechanics of the choice are actually very human.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like finding a small leak in a major dam.
Okay, I like this.
Right, so the stated priority, the absolute rule painted on the wall of the dam facility, is to keep the town below safe. So obviously you should plug the leak immediately.
That's the mission statement.
Exactly, but the intelligence perspective steps in and says, wait a minute, don't plug it yet. Let's put a sensor on that leak.
Let's study the water pressure.
Yes, let's track exactly where the water goes, how it interacts with the soil, what materials are eroding. Because if we let it run, we can learn so much about the structural integrity of the entire adversary's dam network.
Which is incredibly valuable data.
But you're actively risking a flood that could wipe out the town. You're risking the town just to preserve this incredibly rich data stream.
That's a perfect way to look at it. In your example, the town represents human life, which is the stated priority. And the sensor represents the intelligence collection.
Right.
The core friction is that plugging the leak inherently destroys the sensor's value. I mean, you can't study the water pressure of a hole that's been plugged up.
You really can't.
So the paper is arguing that in the real world of intelligence, the pressure to keep the sensor running, to gather that systemic data, it can sometimes just override the mandate to protect the town.
Decision makers are constantly weighing that long-term strategic value against the immediate localized risk.
Yeah. And the paper uses a very specific, almost clinical phrase for this. They call it continuing access.
Continuing access, that seems to be the golden ticket here.
It really is. The logic dictates that if you intervene, you lose continuing access. It's a really stark way to frame operations, honestly.
Because it means that stepping in to save someone or stopping a crime is literally categorized as the loss of a valuable asset.
Which is wild to think about. Categorizing intervention as a loss brings us to the next critical layer of this whole analysis.
Right, because now that we understand the friction on the ground, we have to look up the chain of command.
We have to ask why decision makers so often default to observation over action. We're moving from the tactical choices on the ground to the high-level institutional incentives.
I gotta follow the budget, basically.
Always follow the budget. The source explains that intelligence outcomes are closely linked to three major institutional pillars:
Okay, what are they?
organizational capability, strategic influence, and the justification of resources.
So let's break those down mechanistically. Organizational capability is basically a measure of how competent and far-reaching the agency is perceived to be.
Yeah, exactly. By the
Okay.
people overseeing them. And then strategic influence is essentially bureaucratic currency.
Bureaucratic currency, I like that.
Think about it. If you are the agency bringing the executive branch a live 24/7 feed of an adversary's internal communications, you are the most valuable person in that briefing room.
You definitely have the ear of the policymakers.
Yep,
And if you plug the leak and lose the feed, your agency goes to the back of the line.
precisely. And the budget, that justification of resources, naturally follows whoever is sitting at the front of the line.
That makes total sense.
The paper argues that these three pillars are fed entirely by measurable intelligence success. The more data you stream, the stronger your capability, your influence, and your budget become.
Okay, I have to push back here on behalf of the listener for a second.
Go for it.
Because this sounds incredibly cynical, doesn't it? Are we really saying that these highly secretive elite government agencies operate like, I don't know, corporate sales teams chasing end-of-quarter quotas?
It does sound like that, yeah.
Like, are they intentionally keeping dangerous, life-threatening situations active just so they have a glossy metrics report to justify next year's funding?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the paper actually provides a much more nuanced answer than just, yes, they're evil.
Okay, good.
This is a critique of institutional incentives. It's not an accusation of universal cartoonish malice.
So they aren't just sitting in dark rooms laughing while people get hurt.
No, not at
Okay.
all. The authors are not arguing that intelligence officers actively want people to get hurt just to secure a budget increase. The danger highlighted here is the system design itself.
How does a system design override human intent? Like, if the people are good, why does the system do bad things?
Through the metrics it chooses to reward. That's the key. The danger is that systems built to measure intelligence success unintentionally reward the continuation of collection over immediate intervention.
Because success is quantified by the volume of data, right?
Exactly. The number of active sources, the continuity of access, it's the metric itself that warps the behavior.
Oh, I see.
If an agency's success is defined by the intelligence it gathers, an intervention inherently stops that gathering, then the massive bureaucracy will just naturally favor observation over action. It's a systemic drift.
I hear that it's unintentional, I really do. But if you're the director of an agency, you know how metrics work.
Sure you do.
You know how middle management responds to quotas. At what point does unintentional systemic drift just become a convenient excuse for turning a blind eye to the human risk on the ground?
And that right there is the exact tension the paper's highlighting. The director of an agency is also trapped in a system, right?
Yeah, I guess they have a boss, too.
They must show a return on investment to a legislative body. They have to prove they're producing results to secure the funding needed to just keep the agency running.
So the budgeting cycles create this massive distance between the high-level decision makers and the actual ground reality.
Exactly. The metric abstracts the danger. A live threat just becomes a data point on a spreadsheet proving the agency's worth.
It's like the bureaucracy has its own gravity, and it just pulls the people inside it toward the data, completely regardless of their personal intentions.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Which brings us to this proposed statement in the paper. The text distills this entire dynamic into one incredibly heavy sentence.
Oh, this is the big one.
Human life is the stated priority, yet intelligence collection can take precedence, reducing even innocent life to an expendable cost in a system where intelligence outcomes shape budgets, funding, and strategic advantage.
Calling human life an expendable cost is just, it forces us to look at the people caught in this machinery.
It's brutal. In accounting terms, an expendable cost is just overhead. It's something you're willing to lose in order to do business.
Exactly. And the paper is arguing that when intelligence outcomes dictate your funding, the system begins to calculate human risk, not as a tragic anomaly, but just as the standard cost of doing business.
If the system treats the mission as the ultimate goal, what happens to the informant on the ground? Or the innocent bystander walking past that leak in our dam analogy?
Right. We have to look at the ultimate consequence of this system. The paper reaches a very specific conclusion about the psychological shift that happens.
What kind of shift?
It argues that whenever institutions attach significant financial value to intelligence outcomes, human beings risk being viewed instrumentally.
They're instrumentally, meaning they're just seen as instruments.
Right. To view someone instrumentally is to strip them of their inherent human value
Yeah.
and assign them only the value they provide to the system.
They become merely a means to an end rather than an end in themselves.
Precisely. They become a tool for the agency to use to get its data stream, maintain its advantage, and secure its budget.
So what does this all mean for the listener? I can hear you wondering right now, why should I care about abstract intelligence theory or the internal metrics of spy agencies?
Most people will never even see a classified document.
Right. But this matters because it completely changes how we view government accountability. It changes our understanding of bureaucracy itself.
It forces us to ask how we measure success in any powerful institution, really.
Because if a system is designed to prioritize a metric, literally any metric over human well-being, the people inside that system will eventually become instruments of the metric.
That is a fundamental rule of institutional design. And, it paints a fairly dark picture of how these agencies operate.
It really does. It sounds pretty bleak.
But the paper doesn't just leave us with that grim reality, thankfully. It offers a crucial caveat, a sort of structural counterweight to the bureaucracy.
Oh, right, the safeguards. This raises an important question. Is this instrumental view of humanity an inevitable, unavoidable outcome?
The paper says no. It argues that whether this happens in any specific case depends heavily on 4 distinct safeguards.
The 4 pillars that hold back the pressure of the system, the paper lists them as the specific facts, oversight, legal obligations, and ethical constraints.
Let's look at the friction here, though. How do these safeguards actually battle against that massive budgetary gravity we just talked about?
Yeah, let's break them down. Let's start with the specific facts.
So this refers to the operational reality on the ground. Like, how imminent is the threat? How valuable is the data?
Because the decision isn't made in a vacuum.
Right. If the sensor on the dam tells you the dam is going to break in literally 5 minutes, the specific facts overwhelm the desire for more data.
You just intervene, you plug the leak.
Exactly. The friction lies in the gray areas, when the dam might break next year. But the data is highly valuable today.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about oversight? How does oversight actually work in a highly classified environment?
It's notoriously difficult.
I mean, if a legislative committee is supposed to be the safeguard, but the agency controls the classified data the committee gets to see, doesn't the system kind of just police itself?
That is the perpetual challenge. External review relies on information symmetry, which rarely exists in intelligence work.
So true oversight requires independent bodies who actually have the clearance and authority to look over their shoulders.
Yes, to ask, why didn't you intervene here? But the friction is intense. The agency will always argue that the Oversight Committee just doesn't understand the strategic value of the continuing access.
So the safeguard only works if the overseers are willing to aggressively interrogate the agency's metrics.
Which brings us to the third safeguard, legal obligations.
This one seems like it should be the strongest wall, honestly. Like, what does the law actually require the agency to do?
You'd think so, right? If there is a legal mandate to intervene when life is threatened, That should act as a hard boundary.
Does it not?
It acts as a boundary if the law is clear. But in the realm of foreign intelligence, operations frequently happen in jurisdictions where domestic laws just don't apply, or under covert authorities that are intentionally broad.
Oh, right. So the friction here is that agencies employ teams of lawyers whose entire job is to interpret legal obligations in a way that maximizes their flexibility.
Exactly. The law is often treated as an obstacle to be navigated rather than, a strict moral absolute.
Wow. Okay, leaving us with the final safeguard: ethical constraints. This is the internal moral compass of the individuals and the culture of the institution.
And honestly, this is often the most fragile safeguard of all.
Really? It feels like it should be the most personal one.
It is, but it comes down to the moral injury of the operator on the ground. When the overarching bureaucracy is constantly demanding more data to secure the budget, it takes immense courage for an individual officer to push back.
To say, no, the risk to this informant is too high. We are pulling them out and shutting this down.
Right. Ethical constraints require individuals to actively rebel against the systemic incentives of their own employer.
That is a constant, incredibly high-stakes balancing act. On one side of the scale, you have the massive institutional drive for data, the pressure of budgets, the gravity of the bureaucracy.
And on the other side, you have the facts of the case, the oversight committees, the legal boundaries, and the personal ethics of the human beings making the decisions.
And the central thesis of the position paper is that when those four safeguards are weak, or when they are eroded by secrecy, the institutional incentives will just crush them.
The natural gravity of the system will pull toward collection, and human life will become an expendable cost. The safeguards require active, exhausting effort to maintain.
It takes a lot of energy to plug the leak, especially when the system is literally handing you a promotion for studying it instead.
That's the tragic reality. The system rewards the data. It requires strict adherence to those constraints to choose intervention, because intervention always looks like a failure on a spreadsheet.
This has been an incredibly dense and rewarding deep dive. Let's quickly recap the major frameworks we've explored for you today.
Sounds good.
First, we looked at the inherent clash at the operational level, how the intense desire for continuing access to a live stream of information directly conflicts with the need to intervene and protect lives. You simply cannot study the leak and plug the leak at the same time.
Second, we moved up the chain of command to see how high-level metrics, budgets, funding, influence, create a bureaucratic currency based entirely on data flow.
This unintentionally builds systems that reward observation over action. They manage the threat rather than neutralize it, because the threat generates the data.
And finally, we explored the deeply philosophical consequence of those metrics, the very real risk of reducing human beings to instruments.
Because unless vigorous oversight, tight legal boundaries, and strong personal ethics are actively maintained, people just become mere tools for data extraction.
It's a vital critique of how we design systems of power. And it's a stark reminder that metrics are never neutral. They absolutely shape the morality of the institutions that use them.
And just to reiterate our impartiality check one last time, this deep dive was an exploration of a specific critical perspective on institutional design, drawn directly from the provided paper.
We're unpacking the argument that these incentives exist and exert a dangerous pull, rather than declaring this the definitive reality of all global intelligence operations.
Right. It serves as an invitation to think critically about the hidden architectures of the institutions that operate in our names.
Which is something we should all be doing.
Speaking of thinking critically about hidden architectures, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at government intelligence systems, right?
Yeah, secret agencies and spy operations.
We've looked at how the pressure to maintain data streams can warp priorities and treat humans as expendable. But as you go about your day-to-day, I want you to take this exact framework and apply it to a system you interact with every single day.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Think about the massive technology and social media corporations that shape our digital lives. What happens when these platforms apply similar metrics to the endless streams of personal data they collect on us?
Their success, their funding, and their strategic advantage are measured almost entirely by the continuous flow of user engagement and information.
Exactly. If the ultimate metric is keeping the data stream alive, when do everyday users and our well-being become just another expendable cost in the pursuit of the perfect algorithm?
That is a chilling application of this paper's logic, honestly. If the incentive structure is identical, If the budget relies on the sensor never being turned off, we should expect the exact same instrumental view of humanity.
If the dam is leaking our personal data, are they ever going to plug the leak, or are they just going to build a better sensor to study the flood?
Yeah, it's really something to think about the next time you open an app and start scrolling.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love unpacking these complex ideas with you, and we hope this gave you a new lens to look at the systems around us. Until next time, keep questioning the metrics.